just in case you want to check with social media and things to find out where I'm wrong, I have a degree in food science, four-year degree in food science and technology. I have worked in the industry and I have been teaching at the university for over 20 years, and almost every subject in that degree has something to do with food safety, as well as whole subjects on food safety. The other thing there are two things that we teach our students who are mostly going into industry, is that there are two important things about food processing and manufacture, is both safety and quality. Sometimes they work together and sometimes they work against one another. But just in case you think I don't know what I'm doing, I may make mistakes, but I do know what I'm doing. So we're going to be talking about food safety for volunteers, and we are going to be talking about the kind of food handling that we at St George's do. So this is not a full course on food safety by any means. So why bother? I don't think we've ever had people actually getting sick from our food at St George's, and we think we know what we're doing, but we have to, because some time back the diocese was saying people who handle food need to have had some kind of safety training. And food handling in volunteer groups is not the same as cooking at home. So that first website that you've got written down on your notes is about this from the New South Wales Food Authority on charities, groups and volunteers. If you want to look at things, extra things, this is excellent. We're just looking at this. We will be looking at allergens, but there are various other things here that you can see that they also handle, and as well as that there's a whole lot of other stuff down here. I keep pointing with my finger to the screen, that doesn't work, that if, it might be something that you might want to look at some other time. So that's just a bit of extra material that we're not going to be really worrying about at the moment. Now, can you write down on your next screen what food-related activities we do at St George's? But I'm looking at the different ways the food is done rather than what all the events are, but that helps. When we have normal life, as distinct from St George's, there are different ways that food is delivered to the community. We can have home cooking. There are things like sandwich shops and cafes. There are restaurants, and there is food which we mostly use that come from food factories, and then they go into the home cooking and so on. So the ones that have least problem with food safety is generally cooking the meal at home at night, making the breakfast and so on. You make it, you yell at the kids to come, and when they come then it's eaten straight away. So often there's no real time in between the cooking and the eating, so that's one way that food is delivered. If you've got a sandwich shop or a cafe, you may have sandwich fillings sitting out in, we hope, refrigerated trays. We may have cream cakes in a refrigerator, etc. And they aren't made on the spot. The sushi is made beforehand, and it has to be kept for a while and then served. Restaurants are more complicated because you've got you have a large menu there. You have a lot of things that have to be made in a hurry. They have to make sauces and all kinds of food preparation beforehand when they don't know exactly what's going to be used. If you run a restaurant, you have to do an awful lot of paperwork tracking how long things have been out of fridges and how long it was since you bought those particular things. That was a big fuss when it was all brought in, but now in cafes and things have to do it as well, but it's not as bad as in restaurants. Now, food factories, I'm just calling in a sort of a general way, they're the hardest ones to get safe food to the community, because they have to be made, they have to go to warehouses, they have to be stored, they have to be transported, they have to go to the supermarket, etc., 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 etc. And there's a much longer time between when they are actually processed to when they are eaten. So in general, the home cooking of these things is the easiest one, and the one that's less likely, if it's done properly, to cause that you have to take a lot of precautions about safety, and the whatever's in a supermarket or something, that is a major operation. So where do our St George's activities fit? Often the things that we do are between home cooking and cafe type things. If we do anything of the restaurant kind, we make we decide what we're having. We don't have to have big menus and all. So somewhere, as you say, between 1 and 2, or between 2 and 3 are the kind of things that we're doing. Now, the things that we have to deal with that commercial places don't have to deal with, we've got awkward or makeshift equipment. The kitchen is cramped. There are many groups use the kitchen, and you don't necessarily know that it's been cleaned properly between the different groups. We often have quite large quantities of food and limited refrigeration space. If we try and use many workers inside the kitchen, they get in each other's way, and there are many workers that sometimes people are transporting things out into the hall or into the garden or whatever, and other people doing other things. You've got, if we're talking about morning tea, which is, after all, the most common thing that we do, that you have food transport from home, and there are delays between cooking and serving. The one that Peter's been upset about is with the sausage sizzle barbecue type of thing. So we've got these particular problems. I'm going to try and talk to you about the ways that food can become unsafe, and we'll see if, or you can see how you can fit your activities into this kind of picture of what we're doing. So now, next job. Put in an order of risk. Put the worst at the top and the least at the bottom. And a risk is how likely something is to happen multiplied by how bad it is. So that, for example, an aeroplane flying into the church in the next 20 minutes would be absolutely catastrophic, but it's very, very, very unlikely. So we don't have a big risk of that sort of thing. If it's the other way around, trips and falls around the place, they maybe have bad outcomes, or they may just have minor outcomes, but they are very much more likely. So that's when we're talking about risks, that's what we're talking about. So we've got these things: pesticide contamination of food. Has the food been treated with ionising radiation to stop bacteria growing? Are there additives in food? And additives are things that have been agreed to. They are the ones that we know about most put into food. So it might be something like citric acid is added to something, or cornstarch, or whatever. Microorganisms we'll be going through in detail. a packaging failure, something goes wrong with the packaging, use of genetically modified foodstuffs, allergens, distribution failure, and deliberate contamination. Know what I mean by distribution failure? Okay. When I was working at Master Foods, we were getting capsicums down by a refrigerated truck from Queensland. And at one stage, I can't remember whether the refrigeration failed or the road was cut or the truck broke down or something. And the truck instead of coming down overnight in the truck, it took 3 days. And when it got to the factory and they opened it up, fortunately, I wasn't one of the ones who had to hose out all the red capsicums that had liquefied all over the truck. That would be a distribution failure. I would think that school milk left on the front porch of the veranda of the school, if any of you are old enough to remember that, I would count that as a distribution failure. And what was the other one I thought? Oh, packaging failure. Has the packaging broken or has something gone wrong with the packaging? So can you put them in order of most dangerous at the top and least dangerous at the bottom? Okay, so if you have managed to think about some of those things, we can now have a look at what we've got here. As Bernard said, the real risk is far and away from microorganisms. It's not food additives, it is not Norman Swan saying processed foods are very bad for you, it is not these other things. So if we have a look at that, we've got microorganisms, and the packaging and distribution failure will usually contribute to those microorganisms growing in the food, and they're the ones that make you sick. Deliberate contamination is a very nasty thing, but it's very rare, so that's put as a minor risk. If somebody does come along and inject strychnine into Arnott's biscuits, as somebody was claiming a few years ago, that would be a very terrible thing, but it wouldn't involve a lot of people. And after that is pesticide residues that have come in from agriculture, are very minor, and they are pesticide use is very strictly policed. To use any kind of pesticide, on a food crop, the pesticide itself must be specified in the legislation or regulations. It has to be, it's not only the kind of pesticide, but the concentration of it, how much you are allowed to use per hectare, and how far before harvest you can use it. And some of those things, when I was teaching this in detail, I was very surprised. Some of these pesticides, it's as much as a cup of material per hectare of crop. So it's very strictly controlled. Food additives are extremely innocuous things, and they're very small risk of anything. Genetically modified foods have things against them as far as cost, as far as control by major seed companies and so on, but they are have never been shown to cause any kind of public health problems. And irradiation likewise. When irradiation was discovered or was worked on in the 1960s, it was supposed to be so excellent you don't have to add any chemicals, and in some cases it is a really fabulous way of keeping things from keeping fresh material from spoiling, And of course the consumers said, no way, we are not going to have our food made radioactive, which it doesn't do. Okay, that's that. So our real risk is microorganisms, packaging failure and distribution failure. And you will have noticed perhaps what was the thing that I left out of the previous slide? Allergens, yes, good. Because allergens come into a completely different category from these things. Now we've got allergens right at the top there, but for most people, allergens are not a problem, but for an allergic consumer, there is no safe limit for the allergens that they are sensitised to. So people who are peanut sensitive, I have a friend all of whose children had bad allergies from when they were little. The baby had anaphylactic shock and had to go into hospital because his older brother had been eating a peanut butter sandwich and came into the room and sneezed. So allergens are something that are really important, and at the end of when I've been talking about other things, they come into a different category and I'll talk about them. Now, these microorganisms, we're talking about bacteria that are single-celled organisms. They can cause diseases. They can be very important in your health. So there are good bugs and bad bugs, and there are more good bugs than there are bad bugs, but they do cause a lot of food spoilage and food safety issues. There are moulds that are fungi, which are now not really classified as plants, but there's no other way of talking about it at the moment. They require organic food, and they grow really beautifully on fruit and vegetables and anything that's around. Bread, now that the consumers don't want any preservatives in the bread will go mouldy. The inside of your fridge, the inside of the bathroom, anywhere. Yeasts ferment sugars to alcohol. They don't generally cause a lot of diseases, but they do cause spoilage. Viruses in food are fairly uncommon, and they grow in living cells, so you have to have something that's alive for the viruses to grow, but occasionally you'll get an outbreak of virus somewhere that is usually connected with one factory or one place. And so the ones that are most important for our point of view are bacteria and maybe moulds. So the food poisoning bacteria, there are two kinds. One kind causes an infection inside your body. That means you've got large numbers of living bacteria infect the digestive tract, you get stomach pains, vomiting, diarrhoea. There are three kinds, salmonella in meat, poultry, eggs and milk is the one that you may have heard of. So you've got to have a few salmonella floating around that you happen to pick up. It's not going to do anyone any harm, but if they have multiplied and you've got lots and lots of them, that's when they make you sick. The other thing is that bacteria and some plants produce toxins, and the thing is that you might kill the bacteria, but some of the toxins can be still there and still toxic. So you've got Staphylococcus, Clostridium botulinum, Bacillus cereus. Staphylococcus is often in creams and eggs and various other things. Clostridium botulinum loves meat that has been processed but improperly processed, or yes. Yes, usually. When I was a student, the answer was definitely yes, because raw eggs didn't have any bacteria in them, but there are a lot more bacteria in eggs. But we'll have a look and see what happens when you put raw eggs into something else and it sits around for a while and multiplies until there's a really, really lot of... No. probably it got in from the chook that laid it, and there are maybe only a few salmonella inside the egg before the shell is formed and the white membranes around. That's fairly impervious to bacteria. If the egg is cracked, though, it can get into the egg. The egg laying is all regulated and so on. That in general, it's not something that you need to worry about, and mostly people don't eat raw eggs for good reason, and because eggs are mostly used in cooking. But if you have a look at when you put the raw egg into the very hot soup, you see that it's being, the white goes solid. I like soft-boiled eggs. No doubt something could survive inside them, but inside the yolk, but it's not a major problem unless some of these other things I'm telling you about happen as well. These other ones, Bacillus cereus, is in rice and pasta, and it is a toxin that is heat resistant and is not deactivated by cooking, nor is the Clostridium botulinum toxin, which is one of the most poisonous things around, and what teenagers are now using on their faces is Botox. I can't believe that anyone would do that. And they are not deactivated by cooking, so you've got to have treated things correctly. You can't just say, oh, well, you know, this looks a bit funny and I've had it for 2 weeks and I forgot it in the microwave and didn't put it in the fridge, but if I boil it up it should be all right. As I had to do last week, I threw it out. I felt pretty noble about doing that too. Okay, so how fast these things grow is the important thing. It depends on the time that they are in a condition to, in the correct temperature to be able to grow, what kind of things are in the food that the bugs can grow on, and what kind of things in the food limit the growth of microbes, that is the available water, how acidic is it, and then there are two others, oxygen and preservatives, which we're not going to be dealing with now because it's not really relevant for what we're doing now. And how much growth you get depends on how many bugs you started off with. So if you started off with one bug, it might take quite a while before you got an appreciable number. If you started with a lot of bugs, then it won't take so long. So that's what we're going to be talking about now. Time, temperature, food type, and what am I doing pointing at that? Food type and the number of bugs that are there to start with. So here's time and temperature. For those of you who are mathematically literate, you will see that the numbers on the bottom of that scale are rubbish, so don't look at them. But I couldn't get another picture that did what I wanted it to do. Microbes have exponential growth. So in theory, if you start off with 1, after maybe 20 minutes, you've got 2, then you've got 4, then you've got 8, then you've got 16, then you've got 32, 64, and you'll see the numbers on your sheets going up there. If you start, on the other hand, at 1,000 odd, then it's going up more steeply, and if you start off with 10,000, it's going even more steeply. So that means that this thing here says that the rate of change of the number of bugs, so the N, with respect to time, so how fast are they growing, is a constant number times the number of bacteria that you've got there. Okay, so if you start off with a lot, then it's going to be growing faster than if you don't start with very many. And that's far more than you really need to know. So if you don't figure that out at the moment, just remember that as it goes on, it gets worse and worse. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that in terms of time. Now, the other thing is that pathogens or disease-causing organisms can be present and the food doesn't look as if it's obviously spoiled. Doesn't always happen. So that is the unsafe way that things are. If you've got something like milk, usually you will get a lactic acid bacteria growing faster than anything else in the milk, and it'll start to get, the milk will start to get clotted and horrible, and you pour it into your hot coffee and it goes all lumpy. Then that is quite a safe thing, because the spoilage organisms that have caused the lactic acid to happen, the yogurt reaction, has happened before there have been a lot of disease-causing bugs. It's the other way around that it's more dangerous sometimes, but you must remember that sometimes it doesn't look obviously spoiled, even though it could be bad for you. Refrigeration slows that growth rate down, and freezing stops the growth of microorganisms, but it doesn't necessarily kill them. So when it gets unfrozen again, then you will get, you can get them growing again. High temperature can kill many microorganisms, but it doesn't necessarily destroy toxins, which we've already said. Now, here's another graph. Don't fuss about the Arrhenius or log generation time or anything like that. But I can't do this. Down this side, where it's low temperature, low growth. Then it gets more and more and more growth until it gets to a maximum, which unfortunately is about the temperature that you are, and room temperature and all. And then it goes back down again, so that when the temperature is very high, there's no growth again. So these are numbers that are important. The -18 is in the freezer. You don't get any growth of bacteria, but it doesn't destroy any toxins. From 1 to 5, that's in the fridge. You'll get slow growth, as you know, if you have got a lemon that's pushed to the back of the fridge and you don't notice it for a while, and you pull it out, it's covered in blue penicillin mould. That mould grew in the fridge, but it grows a lot slower than if you'd left it on the bench. Then the 20 to 45 in room temperature is the top of that graph, where it's growing faster. At 60 degrees they start to die, and at 75 most of the bacteria are dead. There's a poster here which is in the kitchen, on the kitchen wall. It's saying exactly the same things, and it's meant to look more attractive. So here's your thermometer. There's frozen food. There's the fridge. There's the danger zone between 5 and 60, more dangerous in the middle. And then up here, over 60, over 75, you're not getting any more growth. So there's quite a lot in that website. It's got the poster that I've just shown you. How long is too long in these various temperatures? I'm using a horrible acronym here that even I didn't understand it until I looked it up, but that's the way that it is in the New South Wales Food Authority, so I've left it. The Australian requirements for storage and display of potentially hazardous foods. They need to be stored and displayed below 5 degrees C or over 60 degrees C. I have never yet seen in a cafe display cases, I have never yet seen a temperature gauge on that, or in the refrigerators in supermarkets, which I think is very bad. The hazardous food must be thrown out if it's stored or delayed at temperatures between 5 and 60 for more than 4 hours. So Isabel, there's your milk. I would not leave the baby's milk out at room temperature for 4 hours. But remember, it probably takes quite a while for it to go up in temperature to that far. must be used immediately if stored or displayed between 5 and 60 for between 2 or 4 hours. So you've got to either grab it and put it back in the fridge or the freezer quickly, or you've got to use it immediately. If it's less than 2 hours, you can use it straight away, or it can be refrigerated. So if it's 4 hours or more, it's got to be thrown out. And there's more details about that on the website that I'm not going to show. Okay, so now we've got through how bacteria like to grow, and we're going to now look at the type of food that also controls how fast they grow. So the general rule is if it comes from unrefrigerated shelves in the supermarket, it's safe to keep at room temperature. And we'll say as long as it's unopened. Some things can be opened, like biscuits, and they'll just go soggy, but they won't get dangerous. Most biscuits. That's biscuits, that's honey, that's all the things. It's a can of food, it's milk in a box, custard in a box, anything that you buy there that isn't refrigerated. Now that doesn't count for fresh fruit and vegetables. They're fairly safe when they're sold at room temperature, but they will deteriorate a lot faster than if they're in the fridge when you get them home. Now, potentially hazardous foods that could pose a health risk include large quantities of meat-based food will be stored and transported prior to reheating and serving. So this comes in to the things that you are cooking at home or you are bringing in. Can you fit it in can you keep it cold while you've got it in the car? Can you don't leave it in the car or in the kitchen unless it's well, I'll tell you which ones. But if it needs to go in the fridge, you put it in the fridge when you get here. So you've got meat, ready-to-eat foods that need to be refrigerated to keep them safe, raw shellfish, prawns, cooked meats and seafood, cooked rice. Cooked rice I always thought was quite innocuous, but the Bacillus cereus produces a heat-stable toxin that has killed people. So don't leave it lying around for a long time. Dairy or egg-based desserts, they're things that do really need refrigeration. Now, the reason that there are differences between these things, the main reason is how much moisture there is in it. So if they haven't got any moisture that's available for the bugs to grow, the bugs won't grow. They must have water. So sugar and salt, dry coffee and tea and biscuits have very little water in. Chocolate has very little water. So they're stable, they're okay, they're not going to be unsafe. They may deteriorate in quality, but they're not going to go unsafe. Honey, undiluted cordial, you would think these are liquids, they've got a lot of water in them, but they haven't got enough water for the bugs to grow because the sugar that is in the cordial or the honey grabs hold of all the water and holds it really tightly, and the poor little bugs don't have a chance. That's why honey is stable, why undiluted cordial is stable, why Vegemite is stable, because it's got so much salt that the salt grabs hold of the water and the bugs can't grow on it. Now, water condenses on cold food when if you keep your coffee and sugar and things in the freezer and you pull them out, then water will condense on them suddenly. Now, it's not going to be dangerous, but it is going to mean that there's more water in the coffee, it's going to deteriorate faster, and the sugar and salt are likely to get caked up. So you don't want cold food coming out of the fridge and causing caking, loss of crispness, etc. Chocolate deteriorates if it's in the fridge because the fat crystallises on the outside of it and the structure changes. But the other thing for here, which is more important, is that the fridge is not very big, and if it's stuffed full of things that don't need to be in there, then you can't put the things that do need to be in there. It used to be the way at St George's that the sugar was always kept in the fridge because the ants would get to it. But if you put it in a screw-top container, the ants won't get to it, and you won't have piles of sugar all over the place. So that the screw-top containers can protect it from insects, which is more or less what we do now. Now, if things have got limited moisture, they don't need to be refrigerated for short periods out of the fridge. So cheese, you want to serve the cheese at room temperature. The cheese has not, depending on the kind of cheese, soft cheeses have more water in them than hard cheeses. Cheese was originally made to be stable because people didn't have refrigerators, but like a lot of other things like ham, used to have enough salt to keep them without refrigeration, but now because people don't want so much salt, they have to be refrigerated. But cheese, plain cake, bread, jam, undiluted cordial are all safe under the conditions that we've got here. I wouldn't leave them out there for weeks on end, but if they've got limited moisture for the bugs to grow in, that's the kind of thing that you want to do. If there's moisture is available for growth, that is that there's plenty of water around, the safest kind of foods are acidic foods like fruit. So if something is acidic, it tastes a bit sour, and that is least likely to grow pathogens or the disease-causing bacteria. So salad dressings have got generally vinegar or lemon juice or cider vinegar or whatever. Juice, diluted cordial, cut fruit, yeasts can grow on them, but there's not a real health problem in the time that it takes us to make our fruit salad and put it out on the table, etc. So that's not a major problem for handling. Now, the ones that have moisture available for growth and the bugs can grow on them are things that are not acid. Cooked vegetables, salad vegetables, sandwich fillings, depending on what the sandwich filling is. If it's bread and honey and butter, no problem, but most sandwich fillings are nicer than that. Milk and cream, cooked milk, fish or chickens, uncooked eggs, there's your uncooked egg again, cooked minced meat such as cooked sausages, raw meat, fish or chicken, and raw minced meat. So the raw minced meat is more hazardous than lumps of meat because it's got a lot of surface area. The bugs have been mixed all the way through it. Oh, they would have a lovely time. So those are the things that must be either refrigerated or kept hot. Now, adequate refrigeration. So we'll go back onto this one now. The freezer should be -18. The fridge should be 4 degrees or under. 2 to 4 degrees is best. If it goes right down to freezing point at 0 degrees, then your lettuce and cucumber and other things that are mostly water will freeze and spoil their quality. So don't clutter the fridge with foods that don't need refrigeration. Now, when we come in to do our morning teas or other times we're using it, we should look in the fridge because people leave half containers of milk in there. Who knows how long they have been there. You can't tell from the boxed milk whether it's been open for a long time. If it's got a use-by date for next May, that doesn't mean that it's safe if it's been opened. So we should clean up the fridge before we start doing the morning tea. If we all do this, there won't be much there. If you're leaving food for a specific reason, then it should be covered and labelled with your name and the date. I will again put more labels on the top of the fridge, haven't done it today, and a pen for you to do that. there is Glad wrap and alfoil and stuff in the kitchen. If it's not labelled, it should be thrown out. Even if it might be that you say, I'll leave this chocolate cake for the afternoon, and you tell Alison, well, if she's around, she can say, hey, don't throw that out, but otherwise it's not safe to leave food around when you don't know what's been happening. And then, so you check the fridge before you prepare morning tea, dispose of these things, and leave the fridge like that when you're done. Now, the number of bugs present makes a difference. So, for example, milk. You've got two kinds of milk that are likely to turn up here. There is pasteurised milk, which is what we've always had, and there has been ultra-high temperature milk. They're the ones in the boxes. The pasteurised milk lives in the fridge. The boxes, when they're unopened, can live in the cupboard. Because they're living in the cupboard, they can't have any bacteria in them. They must be absolutely sterile, because otherwise, if they sit in the cupboard for a few weeks, then that one bacterium that's in there has gone to 2, has gone to 4, has gone to etc., and the thing starts to go bulgy, and the milk goes sour, even if it's not opened. So you can't tell from the use-by date of UHT milk whether it's safe or not. But the pasteurised milk has been heated to destroy the disease bacteria, but not necessarily the spoilage bacteria. Remember, we said that the spoilage bacteria are a safety factor in milk because it'll look horrible before it gets dangerous. But the spoilage bacteria in ordinary pasteurised milk can be up to 25,000 per mil. That's a lot of bugs. That means it's got a big start on the UHT milk. The UHT milk would have to be open for quite a long time before it got to 25,000. But on the other hand, any milk that's open to the air is going to get a whole range of bacteria coming into it. So either can be contaminated after opening. We should be trying to keep salad, vegetables, fruit and whatever clean by washing them immediately before you serve them, and take care with food during transport, chill at home and keep it cold. As I said, I use those things because I don't like buying extra things that are unnecessary, and besides, when that one has all melted, you can drink it for a nice cold drink, and you can't do that with an ice block. I mean a cold pack. Also, you have to think about not just what the food is, but what has gone into the food for something that you have cooked or you have bought. So we're looking for things, meat, fish, chicken, custard, creams, quiche, has milk and eggs in it, cooked rice or pasta, sandwiches, salads. And they are ones that have to be refrigerated, and they can be dangerous. Think about the ingredients, part 2. So say you are making pancakes for the afternoon group doing, what's it called? Something new, and you want to produce some pancakes at the end of that time for the people. We all know when we're making pancakes from scratch, they've got flour and milk and eggs in them, other things as well. And if you leave the batter to sit for a while, it'll give you much better pancakes than if you just try and mix it up and then try and cook the pancakes. So the batter needs to be refrigerated. If you mix the batter up before you do your activities and then you come back, everybody wants to make pancakes at the end, the batter should have been in the fridge because it's got the milk and the eggs in it. If you decide that you're going to use pancake mix, that just gets water added to the thing there. It's probably a more expensive way of doing it. I've never bought it, but I've had it, and that's always been very nice. And they're not so likely to contain pathogens, and they're not so likely to give any kind of trouble, and they don't have to be left for a long time either. So you can add the water and make sure it's all mixed up properly and then cook it straight away. So think about what's in the food. Water filters. Water filters are not permitted in restaurants and cafes, and there's a good reason for that, because they trap bacteria. The bacteria multiply in the filter. The little bits of seaweed that green cells and bits of dirt and other things that get filtered out of the water sit on the filter, and then the bacteria, the bugs that they've collected there overnight will have a lovely time, and when you start to use it in the morning, it will have many more bacteria than was there in the tap water. Filters need to be if you must have filters, they need to be regularly cleaned and monitored, which we are not really. We aren't set up to do that. And supplying water that's free from pathogenic microorganisms is the most important task for the water authorities. The water in Sydney is extremely good quality, and having a filter either in your house or the kitchen here or whatever is not a good idea. This is a paper which you've got in your notes. They examined Brita water filter systems, which is supposed to be a good brand, and they found that the number of bacteria in there grew very quickly, and we've got the situation where we're not using it from 1 week to the next, or some other people might come in, but there's plenty of time that it's sitting around and fermenting. So the couple of things that came in here is, in some cases, colony counts in the filtered water were 10,000 times those of the tap water that they were feeding into the system. And that many filter material of 5 of 13 new filters before it was even used were contaminated with bacteria and molds. So it's not allowed to be used in our system anyway, but I don't recommend it for anybody. We need clean surroundings to reduce the inoculum that gets into the food. Clean work surfaces before and after use. Don't put the food directly on the bench or the sink. There are lots of trays there and cutting boards. Clean them before and after using, and when changing food. So if you, I'll be talking about cross-contamination in a minute. So scrub with hot water and detergent, or wash in the dishwater on the hot setting. Wash properly cleaning cloths or tea towels in hot water, or better still, take them home, wash them thoroughly and dry them and bring them back next week, please. Cross-contamination, particularly in places like cafes and sandwich shops, are the most common cause of food poisoning outbreaks. So keep raw and cooked food separate. You don't put meat dripping down onto the cake in the fridge. So make sure that things are kept separate. All the equipment needs to be properly cleaned, and well, here we go. Hands washing should be done regularly before handling food and when changing from one food to another. There should be hand washing soap there. You don't need a sanitizer as such, because the soap does a better job for getting the food off your hands. And there has been a lot of research work on gloves, when people expected to find that people wearing gloves in food service places, they expected that to be less of a problem, and it's more of a problem, because when you've got gloves on and your hands get sticky, you don't tend to wash them nearly as much as if you've just got your bare skin. Now, communion, thank you, John. there's really a minimal potential for infection from, we're talking about the common cup here now. The lay assistants need to wipe the cup firmly with the cotton napkin that's there, not just sort of wave it around as part of the ritual. But we're now using individual glasses that are washed in the dishwasher, so that's that's good and that's safe. Juice kept in the refrigerator should be labelled. We talked about labelling. If we're having juice for communion, shelf-stable juice will last longer after opening than refrigerated juice, but I certainly was finding a couple of years ago that there was juice in the fridge because it wasn't all used for one communion, so it was put back in the fridge, and it was obviously full of yeasts. You could see the turbidity, you could smell the alcohol. And if it was screwed up tight, you could see the container bulging. So this is just the same as what we've talked about before. Keep it safe. Now, allergens cause an allergic reaction in susceptible individuals. They do not apply to other individuals, and people should know if they are allergic to things. But we shouldn't be using known allergens in things that we are using for the general public. A food allergy is an immune system response to a food protein that the body mistakenly believes is harmful. A food intolerance is the inability to properly digest or fully process certain foods. They might give you stomach aches. You might find, oh, I can't eat tomatoes, I can't eat, I can't drink milk because I have problems with lactose, and so on. But that's not an allergy, but it's also something that people have to watch out for, but it's nothing like as dangerous as an allergy. An immune system reaction to the food can be potentially life-threatening. So, for example, these are the things we should not be putting in our morning teas or in things that we buy. So we don't want to buy fish cakes, for example, from the shop. If there is anything that's obviously fish, then that's not so bad, because people went to and grabbed Zoe's smoked salmon as if there would be no more smoked salmon for the rest of the year when she brought it in the other day. But it was obviously salmon, and anyone with a fish allergy would not go near it, and it was not put anywhere near the other food. But we don't want to put these things in when they're hidden, particularly. So we've got peanuts, shellfish, milk, soy protein, tree nuts, wheat and cereals, eggs and fish are the main ones. So you don't put, I think I've got it somewhere else anyway. A food handler, this is cross-contamination with allergens. Don't use the same cutting board to cut a peanut butter sandwich and then a ham sandwich. If you're making muffins with eggs and using the same mixer for something that doesn't have eggs, then that's a no-no as well. Cooked prawns, then small amounts of the prawn juice can get onto something that you're using later. So be very careful, even if you are handling these things, that they don't get onto any other foods. Okay, so beware of these hidden allergens. So check the label of prepared foods before using them in the cooking. Don't mix any allergens with other kinds of foods. Nuts and fish in salads and dips, peanut butter in satay sauce and so on. Fish, soy or oyster sauce in meat dishes was something that it didn't occur to me until I went away on a camp, and we were warned, we all had to bring food. We were warned, do not put oyster sauce into any kind of dish, because Nadia is extremely sensitive to fish products, and I always put oyster sauce in my red curry chicken, so I had to think about that again. Anchovies on pizzas, etc. Most fatalities relating to food allergens are when people are eating outside the home, so we don't want to be one of them. Also, if any of you do have any food allergies, make sure that people know about it. You know, anyway. Cleaning and waste disposal, we're nearly done. So make sure that the cloths you use to wipe down benches and sink surfaces are clean. Okay, we should be, any large containers that we've used, wash up, use rubber gloves because you can put your hands in hot water. Dish brushes, anything that's been used or looks a bit grubby needs to be washed up. Use a good detergent. In a previous regime in this place, people used to decide to use that Earth Choice things because it was so good for the environment, etc. The trouble was, A, it didn't dissolve the grease, and B, if it did, you had to use half a cupful to make it work, and that doesn't help the environment much anyway. When I did a test on various kinds of detergents, when we were asked to classify a new detergent that was being made with orange oil that was going to be the magic thing, so we tested various others for their cleaning power, and I found that Morning Fresh is the best of the ones that are on sale. There may be others now, but that was very good. You only need to use a tiny bit, and it was the best for dissolving up the grease. And I think the same goes for the dishwasher detergents that have got that sort of brand on it. Rinse things in clean hot water and allow things to dry if possible, otherwise use a clean tea towel. Linda was in the kitchen last week and found lots of grubby, that spongy sort of stuff, the wipes and things there. I think she took everything home to wash up. I normally do if I've used the tea towels, or if they look as if somebody else has used it. Take it home, wash it, but bring it back, please, otherwise we don't have any. The dishwasher, we should be using the hottest cycle, rinse cycle available. Now this is more about if you've got lots of plates and food and stuff around. If it's only the tea and coffee and cups, that's not so important. And when you're taking things out of the dishwasher, just look at them and check that they have been actually washed and cleaned. Clean the dishwasher on some kind of a system, which I don't know whether we've been doing, and regularly maintain this and service the dishwasher according to manufacturer's instructions that I don't know whether we've been doing either.
It's a new dishwasher, but we will be.
It is a new dishwasher, so you're safe for a week or so. Safe, yeah. And when you're doing rubbish disposal, put a small container on the bench so that it'll sit, some kind of plastic box or something, or a plastic bag on the bench, and put your scraps and things into that. And then when you finish doing any preparation, and then take it out to the dustbins at the end after the morning tea. Don't keep going out to main dustbins and back again. For disposable plates, uneaten food, etc., have some a garbage bin that's lined with a garbage bag, or just a garbage bag, so that you can put things straight into it. If you're clearing tables around, just take the bag around and pick up any disposables and put them in there. Worker safety, knives. Good quality sharp knives are safest. Good quality sharp knives do not survive in this place because people come and pinch them. Not us, of course. So usually the best thing to do, rather than label permanently and keep locked away, is to bring your own in a safe cover. That's just a bit of paper towel holder or whatever If you squash it like that and put a staple in the bottom, that is excellent for keeping a smaller knife than this. You can make it the right size and have it in your bag. You don't want holes poked into your carry bag. You don't want, you're the person who's going to be most at risk from this sort of thing, and you don't have to spend any money. Use an adequately sized chopping board and try and find an uncluttered bench space for chopping. Other safety things, trips and falls are very common around here. Watch out for steps or uneven floors, move slowly, don't carry things in front of you like this where you can't see where your feet are going. Clean up any water or food spills immediately, even if you weren't the person who spilt them. Reduce any kind, yes, if you see that somebody has spilt something on the floor, don't run around and try and find the person who spilt it, just get rid of it. Reduce clutter on the floor. Electrical leads in the kitchen are often trailing around, especially if people are trying to charge their phones at the same time. Don't move trolleys, tables, boxes that are too heavy for you, but get help. Go well. Okay guys, sorry it's been so long, but you can defrost things in the fridge, so you remember that tomorrow you're going to cook your chicken and you put it in the fridge overnight, after which it will be either completely frozen or completely thawed or nearly. The other way to do it is to do it quite quickly, which is you can put it in the microwave on the defrost cycle. It takes it up to higher temperatures usually, but it's only for a short time, and then if you do it just before you cook. So there are those things.